Of course, marriage brings many changes, as you all have known. So then we got married. Well, we lived in Fargo. I went to NDSU. Paul started a business with his friend Bob Cummins, and had been going there before we got married, really. And I drove school bus. And anybody that knew me earlier would go, driving? You've got to be kidding. I got a job in driving.
I actually asked, or yeah, I asked to Tom and Rick, what's the last job you would think that Lynn would have? And they're going, driving? Yep, she's driving a school bus.
Yep. I learned about SNIRT out there in Fargo, which I didn't know beforehand. Then, because a small startup company called Fargo Electronics, which was Paul and Bob, couldn't quite support a married couple. You know, it was a big startup with no income, basically.
Well, it boiled down to, I couldn't be married to the business or a person at the same time. And so
Made the choice.
So I chose a person.
That company later became a multi-million and almost $1 million business too.
I sold my half of the company to Bob for $1,500 and a chair. And the next time we met Bob, he was worth 200 million, so.
Yeah.
I hope it was a really good chair.
Oh, it was a tall chair like that one. So, you know, that was worth at least $19.
But that's okay, you know, we had our choices. We moved back to Brainerd. We lived above a radio shop where Paul was working. I worked at the little local Magic Skillet that's on the corner there in the northeast Brainerd.
And it's still there.
Still there. Yeah, and you know how at that time, you know, to clean the tables, you'd use the stuff with the bleach in it, you know?
Yeah.
Pretty soon I started getting sick. I couldn't handle the smell. Ta-da!
And that was Ryan's fault.
Yeah. But we dealt with dogs and cats and stuff like that, and Paul became a family man. With Jean, we ended up, because of the work that she was doing with that company, being able to purchase that house over on Southwest 4th Street. I don't know how many of you ever really remember that house. What the day we,
The diamond triangle.
No, what Southwest Forest was the one you took to the college.
Oh,
yeah, it was
I'm thinking it was
in college, yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking much later.
And we just purchased it for like 12,000.
Something like that.
Yeah, we got it really cheap, you know, this
But
house.
it was $100 a month, no money down. And that was PITI, and that was everything.
Yeah, can you imagine that these days? And so we, because of Jean, we were able to get it before we even moved in. We'd closed the deal. Before we even moved in, we already had an offer for the 3 back lots that were actually on the river for 9,000.
each,
No, but
the whole thing.
but a $12,000 house, and you just sold $9,000 worth without affecting the house.
And that's what gave us the money to be able to move into our own businesses when we were ready. So we kind of held that. So during that time, we did fixing and repairing the home. We were raising Ryan. We had cats, skunks, and other fun times. Do you remember our skunks?
Yeah, that house overlooked the bluff and the river, basically. And the folks before us had a dryer in the back porch, so there was a 4-inch hole in the wall. And so our cat would come and go through that 4-inch hole, so that worked well for us. And we'd feed the cat our leftovers amongst other things, and the cat was always picky and only ate a few things out of leftovers. And then one day we noticed the leftovers were all gone. And every time we put out the leftovers, the next day they were all gone. We went, oh, the cat's gotten real hungry. And then one night, we heard a bunch of rustling back there while the cat was in the house. We go, and we sneak over there and we turn on the light and there's a family of skunks.
Oh, God.
Mama and several babies. And they ignored the light and they just kept on eating. And then they curled up and they took a nap right there. And they never bothered us.
No, needless to say though, once they had left again, we made sure it was blocked so we didn't have the skunks coming in. Ryan learned the word hot real fast one day.
That was his first word.
Yeah, his first word. We had, I was cooking, you know, and it was an old house, you know, so I had the oven door open and was
So-
heating the kitchen a little bit, you know, with a hot element, and he reached in and I didn't quite catch him in fast enough.
That's nice orange element and a little toddler. Oh, that's pretty. Let's grab it.
Yeah, I don't think you really remember that, but
No,
we
Yeah.
do,
the story about it.
yeah.
We saw him reaching for it and went flying through the air and got him just 1/10 of a second after we grabbed it. And we ran his hand underwater immediately and it was seared, but no harm done. It healed real quick.
So,
But he learned that word real quick too. 6 months before he learned anything else.
yeah, we were learning about all kinds of things, of course, like everybody else did. Paul started working for Arvik Telephone, which was in Pequot Lakes. And that was after Ryan was born, or right before Ryan was born. I can't remember
After.
which. After, yeah. I don't know, you know, we complain about the weather and the cold. There was 2 straight weeks of -40s that winter. And Paul was driving between Brainerd and Pequot Lakes at that time in our poor old white van.
The old beat up van.
What
Yeah.
year was that?
It was 1975. So between 1975 and 1976, you know, because it might have been January with that temperatures. But it was super cold for -40s, and that poor van kept going and going and going. We finally realized that it had stopped charging even. So we had to take it in for repair, but it was like, wow. We also felt very isolated that year, you know, because it was cold. We also didn't feel like we could go and afford to do anything. And it wasn't until after that that we realized how many things are free that we could have done. You know, you're close to the college, the library, you know, so many things we could have done. But at that point, we didn't quite know yet. So that was kind of fun. Let's see, then we had some training in Tennessee. We went down to Milan, Tennessee for, was it 2 months? Or a month and a half, or what was it?
5 weeks.
5 weeks. I was very pregnant with Freya. I didn't mind at all because I got out of the hospital and packed the car and was able to just ride in the car. I tried to drive, but I couldn't quite handle that after getting out of the hospital. And we had her in a bassinet right behind me, so it was real easy to grab her. We got to eat at all the restaurants on the way home. I stopped and we got a brand new baby dress. I was so thrilled. Because at that time I didn't know if it was a boy or girl. And we stopped in the cities and saw family. You know, I don't remember which one's the family, but there was things going on. We got to stop and see family at that point, which would have been on the Hunt side. So let's see, then we had system training in New York with the Mafia Wars. Was it Rochester, New York?
Yep.
Rochester, New York. You want to talk about the Mafia Wars?
Ju-
The day we got there.
I was there for 10 weeks before the school, and first day we got there, somebody's car blew up, and that started the Mafia Wars there. And then every so often, another car would blow up, pretty much all the time we were there, and was on the news all the time. And as I was walking to school, there's a big black Cadillac next to me. And when he started the engine, I thought I'd have a heart attack. But nothing happened, so.
Yeah,
But-
that was kind of fun.
When you were talking about the year Brian was born, it was New Year's Day
Oh,
that
yes.
that we took Maria back to school at St. Ben's,
Remember, we came up there and had the partying with the family that New Year's Eve, or that weekend, or whatever it was. And driving back, yeah, we dropped you
Okay.
off there rather than going straight to Brainerd.
Yeah, and just before we got there, I was hearing this strange squeal in the engine.
But we dropped you off.
But we dropped you off and headed towards Brainerd, and suddenly the alternator froze up and it burned the belt off.
Here it is, super, super
It was
cold.
Yeah.
20 below. We had a 2-month-old baby, and it was a Sunday night, and
There was no cell phones.
and no phones, yeah. And we were a few miles out of St. Cloud. We figured out we could kind of tie a piece of twine around
Right.
the pulleys and get the fan to run for about a mile, and then the twine would fall off and the engine would overheat again. And we inched our way back to St. Cloud. Here it is,
Didn't make it.
10 o'clock. There was one gas station that was just closing down, and we appealed to them. And of
Well,
course,
actually, you got a ride. Somebody picked you up and took you into town
yeah.
and found that place that was open.
Anyway, we appealed to them, and they stayed open long enough to fix it. They didn't have the parts, so we had to.
I was sitting in the van at the time.
Call his friend that owned a junkyard, and this is 10, 11 o'clock on a super cold Sunday night.
Of New Year's Eve, or New
And-
Year's Day.
And they fixed it for us, and we got back on the road, and it just,
Oh.
we didn't have any money even. We paid them some small amount of money.
All the little angels in your life, right?
Yeah, there's little angels that pop up everywhere.
I remember that one. I didn't think about that one adding in. Meanwhile, you were working for Arctic Telephone and you started having fun. Going up to the Boundary Waters. By car, by plane.
I think we're really here to have them talk.
Yes, that's true. Go. What do you remember? What are you guys' stories?
Most of my stories have been told except for one,
Yeah.
which is a more recent one. When Paul and I were flying to Margaret's wedding, and we're going, he had a carry-on bag or something, and I said, do you want to check it? And he's like, no, I'm going to carry it on. So we go through security, and I go through first, and I'm waiting for it, and he's waiting for his bag, and we're waiting, and all of a sudden we realize, there's a lot of TSA around us right now. And I'm like, what's going on, do you think? And Paul goes, it might be the little thing I built for my toothache. Wasn't it for your toothache or something?
I had a little tooth infection, and I built a silver ion infuser, which is just a silver wire and a battery. There's
Yeah, so it's just
nothing
coiled
else there.
wires and a battery, and it looked exactly like a homemade bomb.
Right.
It was a battery and a wire this long.
But it did look like a bomb.
A
And
9-volt battery looks like a bomb.
And the TSA
It did to
guy-
them.
Who's
the TSA guy
igniter?
supervisor was at this point standing next to us, starting to talk to us like, what is this thing that's in there? And he's explaining, he goes, you almost gave my TSA agent a heart attack. And at this point, we now have like 8 or 9 TSA agents around us, and we're gonna miss our flight. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. And what were you wearing? Your shirt said mad scientist or something.
Oh, gosh.
It was something that
That
they're
had
looking
something
at,
interesting
and they're
on it.
reading your shirt like, oh, good, here we go. We got a real one right here. And then eventually they said, well, you can't take it with you. And he's trying to convince him, he needs this thing. And what if we took it apart? And then he said, I
But
should. Then
there's nothing to take apart. I purposely built it that way so that there was no case on it. All you see is a battery and this little piece of silver.
And he said it was the battery they wouldn't let you take because they thought you might have another
That-
thing in your pocket or something.
Well, they said that most bombs are activated by 9-volt batteries. And that's because 9-volt batteries were the most popular batteries in the U.S. And I'm going, well, yeah.
And that's why I have one.
That's the most popular battery in the U.S. You mean you can't carry it?
But it was, and then finally they said, no, you're not taking it with you, and we hit the road. But we almost missed our flight.
Yeah.
And it was all because a mad scientist wanted to get his toothache taken care of. Well, then you said to me in front of the guy, I should have packed it in your suitcase. And he said, if you would have done that, they would have seen it as it went through the x-rays, and he said we would have taken it onto the tarmac and blown it up, and then taken you off the plane.
That's a battery.
Put them in separate places. Put a battery over here and a tiny silver wire over there, and they wouldn't even think about it.
That's exactly right. One in your suitcase and one in your carry-on, and no one would care.
Right.
Then we ended up moving up to Sand Lake. Neil, do you remember helping us at Sand Lake?
Build that place?
Yeah, the old house.
Yeah, I remember that.
I had more confidence than sense about that.
Yeah, but it worked.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were doing
And
it
it's
just
still there.
one giant truss at a time,
Uh-huh.
and it worked.
Yeah, and that was using those super bad 2x4s. But meanwhile, I was remembering you with helping with the cement,
Yeah.
and it snowed. The middle of August, and it snowed.
No,
Really?
it was September, I think, but still,
It was August.
it was an early snow.
Yeah. He came and helped us in August of 1977 build that house.
But what I remember about that was, I mean, after it was built and you guys were in there and I came through and I needed a place to spend the night and I slept on the floor and I got up and it was warm in there and only because you were making breakfast.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
Yeah,
said,
we heated the place with breakfast.
because he was there, I made some caramels.
yeah, and it warmed up the whole house.
We've worked on those kind
That
of
was
houses.
our
for
first
houses.
super insulated house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was really cool. Dad gave us a check for Paul's birthday that year in November, and it's for one spiral staircase for his
Oh.
birthday.
Nice.
And I don't know if you helped with that spiral staircase?
I don't remember that, no.
Okay, there was a spiral staircase there.
Yeah.
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 But I do remember you being there, and I don't know if Tom was there or
I
not.
stayed a
was there.
couple of times, but I didn't help build.
That either?
Uh,
I
Okay.
might have helped with the spiral staircase, because I was working with Dad on those.
uh,
I don't know if I was on that one.
Well, you were there
Yeah.
with like Neil
And
Kemka.
that house was
Oh,
good.
yeah, because I was building the windows for Neil Kemka's place.
Yeah,
The Chrysler window.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you helped, I mean, at that point, he was building a dome.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so they've still got the dome out there.
I built those windows from scratch. Well, I had the window company, or the glass company, cut them to shape. But then brought them down, and it was in January, and it was quite cold,
Yeah.
which we thought, that's good because the humidity will be really low.
Yes.
And so it won't build up in between the glass. And then I had to buy the channel and the desiccant. But the desiccant only came in this giant container. So we just filled those channels.
I bet it stayed dry for a long time.
I think you could have flooded the place and they would have stayed dry.
We had a little ram lamb when we lived out there on that property, along with goats and turkeys and dogs and cats. And the ram lamb was it was a lamb. It was real small yet, young.
It was the cutest little lamb.
Yeah, and Ryan was a toddler. So Ryan's toddling around. He bends over and the ram brams. Poor Ryan.
Yeah, but after that happened a dozen times, then we ate the lamb.
So Ryan, do they still hurt you all the time?
I think you would have learned
I'm
not to
getting
bend
the theme
over.
here, I'm getting the theme.
And dangerous.
Yes.
That's why I grew up so tough.
They flipped a coin to see who was which one would be eaten.
We moved to a different company. We moved into Brainerd then. And Paul came home one time. I still, this gets to me, right? When he was working at Consolidated Telephone Company, the storms, you know, because he was fixing telephone lines and stuff, or not the lines themselves, but the telephone equipment, would mean that he'd get called out.
Every time there was a storm, it's gonna be call outs.
Yeah, and so he had a pager, and he kept, and we love storms.
1140
Don't you guys love
Broadway.
storms? You know, the thunder, the lightning, the rain,
No.
you know.
Wish I could do the race.
Oh, well, we loved it. If it was daylight and warm enough, we'd go out and walk in the rain and have fun. Not with lightning, but you know, just stormy.
Oh, that's where
But,
they,
uh,
okay.
So during that time, Amy was born in 1980, and we moved to Brainerd on July 4th. And it looked like the pics of people that moved during the Great Depression days. We had this truck or pickups, you know, and they had it loaded with, way high with shelving and or boards, you know, to make
That's right,
it
we
tall.
They used 8-foot tall shelves
Yeah.
as boards to make the back of the pickup tall enough to pile all of our junk in.
But Paul had promised the kids to take them to the 4th of July parade. And here we have all these friends helping us, and Paul takes off with the kids.
Probably helped the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have.
So we lived there about
It was a
10
great
years.
stress though, because I promised the kids, I thought we'd be moved in before the parade started. And here's the kids pushing us pressure to save the parade, and we're not done getting the truck unloaded yet.
Gotcha.
Which one do I do, lose friends or lose kids?
So what do you guys remember of those kind of times? Anything on Paul's story during that time?
Didn't really interact
Nobody
with
was
you much
around at
during
that
those
time.
years.
Yeah.
I think I remember that parade.
You do though. You would have been.
See, and I kept my kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously made the right choice.
Yeah.
Well, he survived.
And at least two of your friends are still, you know.
Right.
Well, they weren't the
remember-
helping though. They weren't the friends that were helping
Oh,
at that time.
okay.
It was people from Pine River that helped us move back down to Brainerd. Oh, in the Grapes of Wrath, yes. Then he came home one day. Well, actually, he'd been doing a lot of side jobs at that point, Paul did. And when he came home, we had enough work and stuff like that, but he took his pager and he dropped it in the fish tank. He says, "That's it, I'm done." Now, I'm freaking out.
That's a dad move, man. I mean, that's our dad's move.
Yeah, well, the one thing was that I was freaking out, but it was only just the pager case.
No.
It was a hollow pager.
'Cause he fixed
Nothing
me.
in there.
But I didn't know that at the time. I'm going, no! How could you do that? But it was funny to me afterwards. It's all those good funs. By the way, our first anniversary was a blast. I mean, it was unusual because
We almost all died.
Yeah,
Joe was there.
yeah. Our first anniversary? I don't know.
We
Yeah.
were working on a tower.
That was on your anniversary.
That was on our
Gull Lake
anniversary.
Tower.
You really are a romantic, aren't you?
Yeah.
It was our first anniversary. I had, you know, the normal picture of what we should be doing, and instead we're working on a tower. But we're working with Norm and Joe, and they're taking this big fat cord. What is that called?
Big coax cable.
Coax. Yeah, cable.
1,000 pounds of cable.
And they're bringing that cable up to the top to reach the right antenna stuff.
380 feet up.
Yeah, and of course Dad's there, you know, and of course it starts to get late, and we're trying to figure, you know, here it is, we can't stop yet, but at one point the cable broke and or the,
Well, we had tied a cable to it so we could lift it up with the pulleys. And we got it up to within almost reaching distance when I was at the top. I could almost reach out and tie it off, and the cable broke. And this 1,000 pounds worth of
Yeah.
very expensive coax cable went down, and it hit what's called a star guy. It's a big bracket about halfway down and wrapped itself around that and cracked the end of the cable. And
luckily,
Oh,
and
bye, Grandpa.
bye, see you later.
Well, goodbye.
And
everyone.
had that bracket broken, the whole tower would have come down.
With you guys at the bottom.
With me at the top and everybody else at the bottom, yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And fortunately, the tower didn't break, and it was only the top 20 feet of the cable that would that was damaged, and the cable was exactly 20 feet too long. And, and so Dad went over to the local scuba shop, because this cable has pressurized air in it that's extra dry. And he got a scuba tank because there's absolutely no moisture in that air. And we purged it out and put a new end on it and all that stuff, and got it up there, and it worked.
But the
But it
one,
was a much longer day than anybody imagined.
Yeah, I remember there's kind of a test run where you went up there first.
Yeah, it had
And then came back down. I went about halfway up. I think it was just for fun. And then came down, and then you did the real thing and went back up. And that's when it broke. And all I remember is hearing that thing coming down, scaring the hell out of me, and diving under the truck.
Which was a
Thinking
smart
that
move.
it landed on me, you know, the truck would save me, but yeah. And then the other thing I remember is, it turned into the longest, boring day trying
Yeah,
to fix that thing, and I was stuck there, you know, no place to go.
no place to go, and it really took way too long.
but we had a wonderful memory from it, because Dad had fish in the truck. And canned beans.
Sunfish.
Yeah, sunfish, sunnies. So he fried up the sunnies, and we had the sunnies and the beans, and that was our first anniversary's dinner.
And for the 30 or 40 years, we would both say that was the best meal we ever had, the
Yeah.
best tasting meal.
So you guys had fried fish with that, so I mean, you guys knew what that was, but for me, first anniversary was kind of new.
Well, it's nice to know that you didn't die that day.
Huh?
That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah, not dying that day was a bonus.
yeah.
It brings the appetite up.
Yeah, especially when you work all day and go up and down silly towers several times.
But I was pregnant, I was hungry for everything.
When did you have to go sleep in the telephone exchange buildings to keep it working?
To sleep in them.
Did you do that? Was that the one at the Pine River one that you're thinking of, where him and a crew were working overnight and trying to make it work?
Yeah, the story I heard was they couldn't get it to work, and you'd come in, they called you, and you'd come in and it would work fine, and when you left, it quit working. And then you had to stay overnight while they went and found a part down in the cities or something.
That might have happened any number of times. But there was one case that the telephone office went down, and nobody in the whole town or for 5 miles around had any telephone service whatsoever. And we were in there with the test equipment and tracing waveforms and all kinds of stuff. Couldn't find anything wrong. It just didn't work, but everything, all the electronics seemed to be working fine. And there were like 4 or 5 of us that had been trained on it and working on it. And the local ambulance guy was hanging around putting pressure on the managers, and the managers were hanging around putting pressure on us. And but finally everybody took a break for a meal, and it left just Lynn and me there. And
Yeah, I just popped in.
and while they were at lunch, we fixed it. And it was, Lynn would say, what about this, what about that, not knowing anything about how it works, but bringing up stuff, and we're all going, you know, you don't know anything, you're wasting our time. But that guided us to the right place, and we got it fixed. And when my boss came back and it was actually working, he was sort of mad at us, yeah.
Why?
I think got his ego.
Because, she played a major part in fixing it, and he didn't.
So it was funny to us. Well, then we started Paul Hunt Electronic Designs first, working out of the home. I had to have other jobs while he was doing that. Then we built on technologies, and you played a part in Hunt Technologies. You played a part. You didn't. And Maria didn't. Maria had her own stuff going on. But we started off pretty small. I remember you guys driving driving cars and going out to different sales locations or the trade shows. You helped Dad build that first trade show booth, I think.
I'm not sure, I don't know.
It was a wooden one, round, wooden,
Yeah.
heavy. We learned later not to do it so heavy, but yeah, I mean, everything, they helped us everything, so.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I was probably in Arizona at the time, but yet that does sound familiar.
Yeah, I thought you helped, but, and Tom, you helped a lot in different areas of Hunt Tech at that time.
All I remember is stopping and visiting with you and staying overnight, or usually I'd have Soli with me, and you guys would play, and we'd sit up talking all night. And there too, I was asking questions that I had no idea what I was talking about, but it would seem to focus you or lead you
Seemed to help.
in some direction.
Now, I still have this little, it's kind of like a folder type thing, you know, with like 30 different ideas on it of possible things you might want to do, you know, to start a business.
Oh, yeah.
And you sent this folder to a bunch of people, said, what do you think we should do? And I still have that folder. And probably the last thing I would have suggested of those 30 ideas was the one you did.
And we pulled that folder out sometime this year and looked at that list of business opportunities, we called it, I think.
Yeah.
And none of them are viable anymore. Not a one, because it's mostly been done already.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, I think I remember assessing that same thing.
One thing I remember stopping for the weekend or overnight, and you talking about this weird thing you found on a scope or something that you kept getting this noise,
Oh, yeah.
and you were tracing it back, and it was something way down at the power line somewhere, and basically that's what gave you the idea for the turtle, is the way I remember.
Well, we did lots of that.
We were doing a phase tracer probably at that time.
Oh, yeah, that's, yeah.
And then that would allow us to scope, because we were watching the signal system, so yeah.
But there was some little thing on that, it seemed like, that was driving you crazy. And you'd drive all around trying to focus in on where it was. Or you said you had. Not while I was there, but
Do you guys remember the two big canoes, green canoes on our old white wagon, station wagon? Yeah, for a whole year or two, we ended up with these big canoes on top of our old station wagon, especially, during the summer. And
Made our wagon easy to find in the mall parking lot.
yeah, and we had some wonderful canoe trips that way, and camping.
I don't mean to interrupt much, but we should do cake, because.
Yes, that's what I'm just saying, yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yep, there's lots of stories, but whatever you guys remember would be awesome. Yeah, I've got stories galore.
The
yeah.
the fun parts though were the parts that
They can share.
that they were into.
Yeah, so basically, we've got plates, we've got cake, we've got pie, and we can sing happy birthday.